So I just did a pretty big deal. A $4,000 trade for modern cards for vintage baseball cards. So I had 11 modern cards that were all signed. A lot of Topps Dynasty, such as, Aaron Judge, Gerrit Cole, Jorge Posada, Andy Pettitte, a lot of moderns. And this store up in Scarsdale, New York, had two T206 cards up for sale. Now, one was a Johnny Evers, and the other one was Ed Walsh. Now, both are Hall of Famers in their own right. However, Johnny Evers was not an amazing player. He had a 270 batting average, I believe. He wasn't really a power hitter. But let's not forget, in the dead ball era in the early 1900s, home runs were not a common thing. And Ed Walsh in his own right was amazing. I believe he had the lowest career ERA out there of any pitcher. So overall, he's an amazing player as well. So two, pretty solid players. Now, Evers is more well known for his defensive plays, such as, Evers, Tinker, and Chance. So that's like the most, famous thing about Evers. And overall, his baseball smarts. So both players are great. So I sold those two cards up for sale, and I really wanted them, and I didn't have the money. It was over $4,000. I didn't have the cash on me. So I had my 11 modern cards, and I reached out to this store and I said, listen, I have these cards. Would you be willing to trade this for this? Now, they said that they needed, $650 extra on top. So it's kind of hard to justify giving 11 cards plus $650 for two cards. It's even like visualizing it was very difficult for me. However, I knew how rare these cards are. They're both SGC 5s and they're both amazing. No creases on it, pretty clean overall, and just great eye appeal, great registration, and just great colors in general. So I knew I had to get these cards, and I knew that if I didn't, someone else would, because any collector is going to want these cards. And the seller wasn't really crazy with pricing. He wasn't really, over the top, whereas, some collectors or sellers of these cards would be like, hey, I know this is in great condition. I want a crazy premium. It was a small premium, but it was justifiable. So I said to myself, you know what? It's worth it. Let's just trade and I'll pay the extra $650. I think it's worth it in my eyes. Now, right now, it's hard to justify getting rid of an Aaron Judge Topps Dynasty and Gerrit Cole Topps Dynasty because, two amazing players, especially since Gerrit Cole's going to come back for the next season. How can you justify this? Well, the way I look at it is the vintage cards are actually scarce, whereas the modern cards are, artificially scarce, right? And I think in 10, 20 years, the T206s will be worth more money. Now, I could be wrong. However, I do believe that, especially in their quality, that it surpasses them, I believe. And I also am a T206 collector, and I will show you guys more of my other cards I've bought and how I've actually gotten them. But I really try to stick with, like dealers, eBay, Facebook Marketplace. Sometimes I'll go to stores, but it's pretty rare because they have to pay rent, they have a lot of overhead. But overall, these two cards are an amazing addition to my collection. Can I justify it? I can, because I really love those two cards. I love the 11 cards, I really did. However, I'm more gearing towards more vintage collecting, and I like modern cards. However, I can always go on eBay and I can always find those cards up available for sale. Whereas these vintage cards in that condition specifically, very difficult to find, and it's very difficult to find a seller that's willing to give it to you at a pretty fair price. If you're a modern collector or a vintage collector, would you have done this trade either way? Like, if you're really into modern cards, would you have said I would never trade for those T206s or vice versa? Let me know in the comment section, and please subscribe because I will be making more videos in the future, mostly about vintage baseball cards, hence the name, Talking Vintage Baseball Cards. And thank you so much, and I'll see you guys next time.